The finale of Season 3, He Who Comes with the Dawn, whether you loved it or whether you hated it, had a ton of lore and fun Easter eggs scattered through the episode. As they adapt these books, they're going to have to squeeze a ton into a short time. In today's video, we're going to break down the finale scene by scene and find all the fun Easter eggs and cool lore topics that I can find in the episode. So let's jump in. The episode opens with this flashback to 10 years earlier in the story, at a time when a new Amyrlin is being raised. This lines up exactly with the books, as Siuan had been Amyrlin for roughly 10 years prior to the start of the story. Where this differs from the books is that Elaida at the time was not up to be Amyrlin against Siuan. She was not even considered for it. We see Elaida coming out of the redstone doorway in the 13th depository, fondling a bracelet on her wrist that isn't really explained. Alviarin mentions the Eelfin. Those are the people that they speak with when they go through that particular doorway. Although it is not fully explained in the show, the Eelfin, which are the people behind the door that Elaida went through, are humanoid snakes, very different from the fox-like Eelfin that we see later with Matt in the episode. The Eelfin give 3 answers to those who enter, and again, unlike the Eelfin, they give 3 gifts to people that enter. While inside the doorframe, it appears Elaida was promised that she would be raised to Amyrlin, foreshadowing that she would become Amyrlin, which she indeed does in this episode. During the ceremony to vote for the Amyrlin, we can see all of the sitters around the hall of the tower wearing their shawls. Now, this is very formal attire that is often worn by Aes Sedai when they want to show off their Aja, usually at formal occasions like this. And we can see some familiar faces around the room that are sitters in the hall. We can see Lyanna as a sitter for the blue before being raised to keeper, and we can see that Varen is a sitter for the brown. Leandrin is also there as a sitter for the red Aja, and of course, Alviarin as a sitter for the white Aja. Also back here, and speaking here, we see Kareen Nagashi from Season 1 as a sitter for the green. Now, none of these people were sitters in the books, but there is a need to condense characters and show us some familiar faces. Kareen was also not alive at this point. She had been killed by the Black Aja members 10 years prior, in the books at least. But there is also mention of a previous Amyrlin that had died, Amerith Jane. She had been Amyrlin for about 4 years, and she was one of 3 Amyrlins to serve in a 10-year period. Siuan was far too young to be chosen typically for Amyrlin, but given all the deaths, they had decided at the time they would go with a young but capable Amyrlin. Hence, Siuan was raised. As the sitters are choosing who would stand to be Amyrlin, you can see Leandrin visibly grimace when Alviarin stands for Siuan. Now, on the surface, this is because Elaida is from the Red Aja, which is Leandrin's Aja, and of course she wants Elaida to be raised. But is there more to it? Well, it's not confirmed that show Alviarin is Black Aja. She is the head of the Black Aja in the books, so I would imagine that she still is. Is Leandrin noting the will of the Black Aja head here and not liking it? Is that what that grimace is for? One other thing of note about this ceremony is that it is very different from the books. And I think that's likely a good thing unless we wanted this to be Game of Thrones. In the books, all of the women are topless to show that they are women as part of the ceremony. There is a lot more pomp that goes into the ceremony also. I tend to think that this is a good move to eliminate that particular custom from the show. We next jump to this scene between Lyanna and Siuan, where Lyanna is questioning Siuan on what she is doing having the tower declaring for the Dragon Reborn. Lyanna thinks Siuan is making a poor political move, and she likely is making this a unilateral decision from her rather than involving the Hall of the Tower, part of why she gets deposed. This is for the most part what happens in the books, with Lyanna being loyal but also mostly in the dark about what Siuan and Moiraine had been up to, and Siuan's actions surrounding the Dragon Reborn feeling inconsistent with Tower precedent. She was right to sound a warning here. We also see Elaida campaigning and planting seeds for her campaign to unseat Siuan later on. She is again speaking to Alviarin and asking for the support of the White Aja, as she believes that Siuan's letters to other rulers declaring support for the Dragon Reborn are essentially like blasphemy. Again, it is interesting to see who is present here considering what we all know from the books. Obviously, Alviarin will become Keeper, but she is the head of the Black Aja, and Galena, who is also with them, is among the Black Aja. The only real difference here is that Alviarin was far more involved in the coup in the books, and she seems to just be someone that Elaida is seeking support from in the show. Here we see Rand picking squashes to meet his toe from episode 6 for Alcera, the girl that died. Now, the scene is poignant for a few reasons. First, it shows that Rand at this point still has quite a bit of humanity, He's coming to terms, though, with the fact that death and destruction are things that he is going to cause to others and to those around him. But also, it's interesting because Rand is the only person who seems to be grieving her. Ruark, who was Alcera's grandfather, never even mentions her loss at any point in this episode, something I found odd. In this scene with Sammael and Moiraine, we get a few nuggets. We learn that Sammael is alive and that he has a tied-off shield on him, something that I'd presume Moiraine did with Sarkarnan, or else she would never have been powerful enough to shield him without it, let alone a tied-off shield, which is easier to break. But most importantly, we learn about Sammael's past and the reinvention of warfare. Sammael was actually on the side of the light during the War of Power for some time and was an ally of Lews Therin Telamon. Sammael was once known as Tel'Jin Alansar, and before turning to the Shadow, was a world-class sportsman, winning archery competitions and championships in fencing, which was a bloodless sport at that time in the Age of Legends. When the Dark One was freed, he was one of the main generals for the Light, and he was very, very good, especially in defensive battle. And as he says in the show to Moiraine, he actually helped reinvent warfare. It did not sit well with him, though, that total control of the Light's forces was given to Lews Therin Telamon, and ultimately jealousy led him to turn on the forces of the Light. He was nicknamed the Betrayer of Hope, as he let the Shadow have an entire city while turning sides, and this was devastating to the forces of the Light. One part of Sammael's jealousy that's interesting is that he was shorter than Lews Therin Telamon, and that always bothered him, which is why you always hear Sammael short jokes. Again, you can learn more about the Age of Legends by checking out this series of videos I made on both the Age of Legends itself and the final fall in the War of Power that ended with the breaking of the world. Also, while you have a second, take a moment and like the video and subscribe to the channel if you enjoy Wheel of Time content. That is what I make here on the channel. But as Moiraine is discussing with Sammael, she wants him to teach Rand how to channel. This is a role that Sammael does not come close to playing in the books, and obviously he won't in the show either, although there is something about this that I might come back to later. Here we jump to a scene of the remaining Black Aja playing around with ter'angreal, including a balefire ter'angreal that we see used later in the episode. And while it does explain fairly well what balefire does there, I think that there are some important things to point out here as well. First, she says that with the ter'angreal she could kill one of the Chosen. This is obviously true in the books, but given that in the show that they have established that the Chosen are essentially invulnerable to most things, this can be thought of as an established way to kill them, one that I think Rand will likely take advantage of in the future. When the Black Aja members discovered that the last piece of the male Idom is inside the Panarch's palace, they head there to find it. But what is the Panarch's palace, and why would that item be there? Well, first, the government of Tarabon is split into two sections. They have a king and they have a Panarch that rule the nation together. Their duties are separate, but they are co-equal in power, and each has their own palace. I'll likely make a breakdown on the nation of Tarabon, of which Tanchico is the capital, and I'll dive into this further if people want to know more about it. So let me know in the comments of the video if you want to hear that. But the Panarch's palace is extremely old. In fact, it's thought to date back to the Age of Legends as a remnant of that time. It has frescoes on the walls that show animals that have never been seen by anybody living, and it contains artifacts of extinct animals and items from the Age of Legends. In the show, this isn't really explained, but there is a ton that we can see while they're searching around the Panarch's palace. Here we see a six-pointed star encased in a circle. Now maybe this is a reference to the three-pronged star they find in the book that is a symbol of hubris, which is in fact the Mercedes-Benz logo. They can't put that in the show without paying for that, but it's interesting they didn't go the product placement route here. It's actually odd they might have been able to do it in a fantasy show. You could also see here what appear to be like a stuffed yak of some sort and a chimpanzee. There are other animals we see around the room as well. We can see a stuffed bear, a warthog head, a saber-toothed skull, fish bones, and even what looks like some form of an antelope. If you know what any of these animals are, let me know in the comments of the video. I am curious. We also see a stone figurine here. Now, in the books, there is a stone figurine that is actually an angreal, which is something that increases the channeler's ability to channel. I wonder if that is what this is. And then obviously we have the redstone doorway. Now, the doorway is not in Tanchico in the book, but rather in Ruidian. The other doorway, the one in Tar Valon, isn't there either. That one is in the Stone of Tyr. But given how they played things out, it actually makes sense to find this here, and I think it worked really well in the plot. Here we jump to Rand and Lanfear in the dream, and Rand is deliberately trying to provoke her so that they can defeat her. While in the dream, she ends up using the true power for the first time that we can see. So what is the true power? Well, the true power is essentially channeling energy directly from the Dark One himself. It is very powerful and also incredibly addicting and can destroy the mind of the person that's using it. The Forsaken in the books are for the most part not allowed to use it except when they're being rewarded by the Dark One, with the exception of a Sammael who is basically always using it. In the show, it appears Lanfear has full access here. Now, what is interesting is that Egwene is able to throw Lanfear out of the dream, and they really gambled this whole thing on her ability to do that, something that she had not been able to do previously that we had seen. So that is kind of odd. Now, I'm not sure the logic of this play, as Rand is about to go before the chiefs of the Aiel, and Lanfear wasn't exactly currently hostile towards him, but nevertheless, their plan does not work, and Lanfear does not come to fight them. We discover in the aftermath that Melindra was a Dark Friend and that Lanfear gave her orders to kill Lan. While Melindra is a Dark Friend in the books as well, and a Maiden of the Spear, she is not Malkiri, and this is not how her plotline plays out. In the books, she's actually Mat's lover for a short time, and then she ends up trying to kill him. We can see this group marching towards Alcair Dal. Alcair Dal is a meeting place for the Aiel clans, and it is perfectly set up for that because whoever stands at the center projects their voice all over and everyone can hear. Now, when we arrive, we see 8 chairs built, reflecting the 8 Aiel clans in the show. In the books, this number is 13, with the Gen Aiel actually being the last clan. There are really effectively 12 clans in the books, because the Gen are extinct. This number seems to reflect the same thing that we've seen with the number of Forsaken, where there are 13 in the books and there are 8 in the show. In the books, a full circle of channelers is 13, and that's the traditional number used to gentle a man. In the show, they make reference later to 8 being the number to still a woman or gentle a man. I think this is just a change in the baseline number established for all of these, and you can see that consistent across the show. Now, when we get to the Shido tents, we see a Shido Wise One alongside Savannah and Cooley. On the X-ray editions in Amazon Prime, it just says that she is a Shido Wise One, but is this one of the named Wise Ones from the books, like Thurava, maybe? You'll also notice that Lanfear makes the Wise One leave when she starts channeling to put the tattoos on Couladin's arms. I'm assuming this was done because she doesn't want anybody to see the weaves of how she does it. Back in the Panarch's palace, we see Tom and Elaine looking for a bracelet, and we hear Elaine talking about delving as a type of channeling that channelers can use to find ores or metals in the ground. This is actually something that Egwene is very skilled in the books. In fact, she was found to be so skilled with earth and with delving that the Shan-Chan thought she was very, very valuable, and they were going to send her back to Shan-Chan before she was rescued. We also get, during this scene, a discussion between Elaine and Tom about the past. This is an interesting bit. Tom tells her that Gabriel wasn't around, that he actually doesn't exist. This is actually the flaw in what Gabriel was doing with compulsion. There are way too many people to try and control with that type of compulsion. It would have been more believable if it played out in the books like he just set himself up as a new lord that had come to the palace and become Morghase's lover. That would have been far more believable. We see Matt go through the redstone doorway and meet the Eelfin, also known as the Foxes. Now, while Matt is in there, he is confused as he doesn't know what the rules of the agreement are, but the ancient Aes Sedai created an agreement with the Eelfin and the Eelfin, but the Eelfin give 3 gifts in exchange for a price to be negotiated. Because Matt didn't negotiate a price, he was hanged as the price afterwards for what he was given. Now, these are hard to catch, but Matt asks for 3 things and in turn is given 3 different things, although it's hard to sort it all out. First, he has to be freed of channeling an Aes Sedai, and he is. He is given a foxhead medallion that hangs around his neck. It will prevent channelers and weaves of the One Power from affecting him. Second, he asks for his memories to be taken away, the ones that he gained of death and pain and the screaming that he keeps hearing. It's unclear if they are taken away or if they're replaced with the battle memories he gets in the books. We're gonna have to wait and see there, but he does say they're gone. Lastly, he asks for a way out and is sent out and hanged. Now, I'll leave out the spoiler about what he was given to get out and how it applies, but nevertheless, he was given a spear in the books and in the show. And it's blink or you miss it, but the spear, it's called an Ashendarai, is what we see him hanging from after he's kicked out of the Eelfin's world. If you'd like to learn more about the Eelfin and the Eelfin and their world, check out this video here about the Tower of Genji, something that we haven't seen in the show, but it ties in with their world. I explain what they are, where they are, and their abilities in much more depth. I'll have that video linked at the end of this video. Now here we jump to this interaction between Nynaeve and Leandrin. Leandrin's role is not nearly so large in the books, but Kate Fleetwood's portrayal and the writing around Leandrin's character have been really, really great. Leandrin's motivation is power and the ability to control her own destiny. Conversation with Nynaeve tells us as much. She wants power, and with power she has more control, and she can prevent bad things from happening to her, just like in her youth. We also see Leandrin set up Nynaeve breaking her block as she is thrown into the harbor and left to die. Now this goes down very differently in the books, as Nynaeve does this much later in the story. In the books, her block isn't that she can't channel, it's just that she can't channel when she isn't angry. The show has gone a different direction on this, but nevertheless, they are breaking her block much earlier, which again, I said in my review, I really like. Nynaeve also doesn't break her block by finally surrendering to Saidar. It's more that she does it by thinking of her daughter, which isn't really explained, but Nynaeve does her best Moses impression and parts the Red Sea here and walks back up on shore. This conversation between Lan and Melindra is interesting because all season they have been setting up something about the Dark One's oaths and what they mean for somebody and why they can't be broken. This isn't entirely true in the books, as Dark Friends aren't prevented from breaking oaths unless they're Aes Sedai. The Aes Sedai are bound with oaths using the Oath Rod, and they don't die if they break them, they just physically can't break them. Let's talk about Sammael. We see Lanfear and Ravine talking together with him dead, with his blood and his insides spread out like a spider web all over the room. For all we can see, he is clearly completely dead. However, from what we've seen in the past about Forsaken and how they heal in the show, I'm not saying it's likely, but I'm also not saying I'm 100% sure he's actually dead. What if he's being kept dead by the fact that his insides are tied up elsewhere and he can't return to his body? We saw Lanfear sort of heal that way after appearing to be dead for a minute. What if once his insides are unhooked from the inside of the cave, he regenerates and heals? Obviously, we'll have to wait till season 4, hopefully, and see that. Let's talk about Siuan's stilling and her execution. This was a major departure from the books, and one that a lot of people have been upset about, including me. I love Siuan, but is what happens to her here legal? The stilling and deposing are technically illegal because of the sinister way in which Elaida made it happen, which is really more of an oversight in Tower Law than anything else, that they didn't have to vote on something as serious as stilling the Amyrlin without a full vote of the Hall. But what about her execution? Was that legal? Well, she was accused of being a Dark Friend, of which the sentence would be death, but there doesn't appear to have been a trial or anything to prove that. She is executed by Alviarin using the One Power, which means Alviarin must have believed her to be a Dark Friend. Yes, Alviarin is Black Aja, but she can't publicly show that, so she would have to follow the 3 oaths. It just seems odd that they were able to execute Siuan without any due process at all, as that's something that Aes Sedai pride themselves in typically. When she's killed, we see the oath that was put on Moiraine to obey Siuan released, and of course Moiraine now knows that Siuan is dead, which enrages her. At first I thought they had a warder bond or something, but it looks like it was just the oath leaving her. Moiraine's love for Siuan and the rage over her death motivates her to finally wound and overcome Lanfear. Lastly, Rand making it rain in the waste, and the scene at Alkir Dog goes down almost exactly how it does in the books, although without the Asmodean stuff afterward. I thought this was done really well, and Rand is set up to have all of the Aiel behind him and probably march on Tyr in the next season. I can imagine that we'll see a potential final showdown on the docks in Tyr between Moiraine and Lanfear as well, if we get a season 4, but we're going to have to see. So that's episode 8, He Who Comes with the Dawn. What did I miss? Let me know in the comments of the video. Make sure to again like the video and subscribe to the channel to be updated when I release new Wheel of Time content. Another thing worth noting is that if you're new or not new to the Wheel of Time, there is an event that you might want to join us for. On July 11th through 13th of this year in Columbus, Ohio, we will be hosting the 4th annual WotCon. It's a Wheel of Time fan convention. This is a convention for fans of the books and for fans of the show only. There are tons of show only people that come. Our special guests this year are Sharon Gillum, who is the costume designer for the show. So if you love all of those costumes you're seeing in the show, she's going to be there. You'll be able to talk to her and you'll hear interviews with her. It'll be great. Maria Simmons will also be there, who's a member of Team Jordan and Robert Jordan's former research assistant and current assistant to Harriet McDougal, who is Robert Jordan's widow. Also joining us will be Michael Kramer and Kate Redding, the famous audiobook readers for the Wheel of Time audiobooks. The convention is a ton of fun. It's a really great community event. There will be tons and tons of other content creators there as well, so you'll get to meet some of your favorite YouTubers and podcasters and TikTokers and all of that. You can still get your tickets while they last at wotcon.com. I can't wait to see all of you there. Thank you to my patrons for supporting the channel. You are all appreciated. If you would like to become a patron, check out the link in the description of the video. And lastly, if you liked this video, check out some of these other videos here as well that I think you'll love. Thank you for watching, and until next time, peace out.